Hey, greetings and welcome, and thanks for tuning into this new Mavericks Positively Disruptive episode where I'm going to talk about how to make the best decisions that really fast track and fast forward your progress. Because as a leader, clearly we have to make the most important decisions, not only for our life, but our business, career, area of responsibility, and obviously areas of life like health, wealth, happiness, and relationships. So it's important that we can make those decisions in the best way possible and to know when we're in a good state to make the best decision, because what can come up is what they call mistake of the intellect. Now, the intellect is a part of ourselves that's involved in discerning, deciding, and judging and discriminating in order to make the best decision, hopefully for ourselves and everyone else and the world. So sometimes this mistake of the intellect, which I actually call mistake of the freaking intellect, which is not fair on the intellect, because the intellect is limited. It can only really discern, decide, judge, and make decisions based on how well you are aware of what's really going on. So the intellect, for example, in our brain physiology is related to the subthalamus. The subthalamus sits in front of the thalamus, which is that central processing unit in our brain that involves the processing of all information and perception, both inside and outside of ourselves. So the subthalamus's job is then to discern and decide based on what you're aware of and what is the best thing to do. So sometimes that is corrupted because we don't have enough awareness. So I'm going to talk about the 5 things you need to be aware of, like a checklist that you can use to ensure that you're in a great state to make a great decision that's going to give you maximum fast forward progress. So first of all, I want to give you an example of this mistake of the intellect. So for example, you're walking along side of the road, it's twilight, the sun's setting, and you noticed alongside on the side of the road there's something there, and part of you thinks, wow, that looks like it's a snake, and some fear grips you. And then as you inquire and go further forward and try and discover what it is, you realize, once your awareness is clear, or you can see what's really going on, that it's actually a piece of rope. And so that's what mistake of the intellect is. What you think is real and truthful is that actually not real and truthful. So Peter Lynch, the great Fidelity Fund manager, there's just an example in business, he said there's been more money lost anticipating corrections than there has been in corrections themselves in the marketplace. So that represents a huge amount of wasted money and probably time and energy and ROI and someone's reputation. So we want to obviously minimize that and avert that. We're all human, we're all developing, but we want to be able to know how to minimize that sort of mistake of the intellect so we don't have those sort of costly and bad mistakes and decisions. So what are these 5 things that allow you to really make a decision that can help fast forward or improve the progress that you're experiencing? So first of all is that if we're in a frequency or a state of lack, of neediness, of frustration, of desperation, of wanting to prove ourselves to even ourselves or others, then we're not in a great state, in a great frequency to make a great decision. And we're likely to be gripped by some sort of stresses or vices like greed or anger or lust or vanity or jealousy or false attachment. And those are not great qualities to have lively in you when you're making an important decision. So to counteract that, you want to ensure, if you're going to make an important decision about your health, wealth, happiness, and relationships, and your leadership, is that you are in a state of possibility, a state of giving, a state of value, that you know what you have developed, you know what you have to give, that can make a contribution to the invincible success of not only yourself but others and the world. So that's the first thing. The second thing is not making decisions when you're in a tired, stressed, or fatigued state, because what that does is it takes this offline, this prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for making all those very important strategic and progressive decisions in your life. So if this is tired, stressed, fatigued, confused, you're not in a great state to make a great decision. So you want to ensure that you get rest, that you go rest first before you make an important decision, and then make it from that restful state when this prefrontal cortex is working better for you and able to perceive what's really going on. So that's the second thing. The third way to ensure that you can make a decision that's going to fast forward your progress is to take time every day to expand your capacity of awareness and coherence. So the simplest, easiest way to do that is to culture having a more settled, alert mind. And by doing this, you're able to feel more, see more, and know more, and then make the best decision. And there's many relaxation meditation techniques out there that all help this process, but the one that I've found to be most effective based on scientific research and my own experience and experience of millions of people and many top performers is the TM technique, Transcendental Meditation. Very simple, effortless, natural technique, that mental technique that just allows the mind to naturally settle down and be settled, which it wants to be, and experience that alertness and that settledness that can allow you to have more awareness of what's going on, and then your intellect can work better for you in discerning, deciding, and making decisions. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing that you want to have a checklist against is sometimes we can have this conflict between what is right and what we like. And if we're in a conflict between what is right, what we think is right, and what we feel we like, then we're also not in a great state to make a great decision. So we have to favor what is right. And the reason why we have to favor what is right first is because that is serving not only you, but everyone else around you, and also the long term. No point in winning in the short term and then losing even more in the long term. And usually when we're making a decision just based on what we like primarily, then it's usually in our own self-interest, and it is usually short term and doesn't really serve us long term. So that is another checklist or checkpoint to make sure that you're doing decision making based on this. And then the final decision, or the decision checklist, checkpoint that you can use to make a good decision, is to ensure that you're not overly eager or attached to what you want. It's good to know what you want, but really you want to be more focused in being aligned with who you are, what your higher purpose is, knowing who you are in terms of your strengths and your weaknesses, as well as those that you're dealing with, strength and weaknesses. And then you're more likely to be in a better state to make a better decision. If we're overly keen and attached to what we want, and we're not really truly aligned with being who we are and knowing our strengths and taking care of our weaknesses and being aligned with our inner why and purpose, then we are likely to kind of make a decision that doesn't really serve us in the long term. So those are the 5 things as a checklist to ensure that you make a decision that's going to really ensure you have fast-tracked progress. And really it's also about sometimes just waiting and observing if you are making a very important decision. Just being able to ensure that you're observing reality and perceiving the reality in front of you in the best way possible. And sometimes it just requires time and just requires you to look more deeply and observe what you have to, or the variables you have to deal with before making that decision. So what happens if you make a decision and it doesn't turn out to be a great decision? It turns out there's a mistake of the intellect involved, and one of these 5 things have not been checked off. Then first of all, you obviously have to acknowledge and accept that mistake, that it did happen, and there was a mistake of the intellect because you didn't have some of these 5 things aligned up. So once you've done that, accepted it, then you have to engage in a process of forgiving yourself, and then you have to work out what the adjustments are necessary, and maybe go through this 5-point checklist for decision making that ensures faster progress, and see which one you're weak on, and see where the vulnerability is in your decision making. And then once you've forgiven yourself and you've made those adjustments and corrections, then you can at some point as time passes laugh at that mistake of intellect, and that then you know you actually let go of it. You've integrated that lesson, and hopefully you never have to learn it again, and you can establish yourself in a better decision making state going forward. So I hope that's useful to you in making these important decisions that ensure that progress is fast and swift and smooth. And this is actually one aspect of our new book coming out. It's called Invincible Success Blueprint, how to get what you want, protect it, and keep it. And it's a book that we've been working over the last year, and we've gone really deep into how to really create invincible success and really having it all together on both the outside and the inside to ensure that happens. So if you're all interested in knowing about this or getting actually the pre-launch introduction, or maybe a few chapters once we get them up there, but you can go to newmavericks.com, and I'll also put a link to the landing page for the pre-launch of the book, and just sign up and we'll give you whatever introduction and chapters we have ready, and then when we release the book in a few months, then we'll let you know and you can get the whole book. So any comments, questions below, please leave them, and I wish you incredible, invincible success and great decision making so that you can enjoy swift and smooth progress.